Hello, dear students, welcome back to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. So today is 4th June 2024 and today I've come up with few important articles for the discussion. So before discussing all those important articles, let's try to solve yesterday's practice question. Yesterday I've given you one practice question, that was the Partnership for the Global Infrastructure Investment is an initiative of which of the following organizations. Now this partnership for a global infrastructure and investment is very important for India. Why? Because recently India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor was started during the G20 summit. So where this particular India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor would link India with West Asia and Europe and up to US also. Right, so in fact US is also one of the key and important stakeholder in this India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor. And in fact this Partnership for the Global Infrastructure and Investment is an initiative of the G7 countries. So we all knew that there are G7 group of countries. They include US, Canada and Italy, Germany, Japan, France, UK. So all those countries, all those 7 countries come together and they formed this G7 grouping. And China has launched the Belt and Road Initiative, right? So Belt and Road Initiative, and this Belt and Road Initiative was launched by China to develop infrastructure across different regions in the world. So to counter Chinese Belt and Road Initiative and at the same time Chinese debt trap diplomacy, so the G7 group of countries have come up with an alternative, that is Partnership for the Global Infrastructure and Investment, and this PGII has also started the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, right? So the correct answer for this question is option B, G7. And if you look at the explanation part of this Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, it is a developmental initiative, and this particular initiative actually aimed at narrowing the infrastructure gap in developing countries as well as help towards accelerating the process of sustainable development goals across the world. So this is the major objective of Partnership for the infrastructure and investment, global infrastructure and investment, right? So the India Middle East and Europe Economic Corridor, it comprises of an eastern corridor, right? So this eastern corridor linking India with the Middle East, right? So eastern corridor linking India with the Middle East, and then we have another northern corridor, this northern corridor linking the West Asia with the Europe, right? So the eastern corridor is connecting Gulf region, India with the Gulf region, and the northern corridor connecting Gulf region to Europe. Okay, so this is about the global partnership on infrastructure and investment. And another important question, that is which of the following rivers of Africa drains into the Mediterranean Sea? So the options given here are Congo River, Nigeria River, Orang River and Nile River. So please answer this question. This is also very important because in UPSC prelims examination every year they must ask, they're actually asking one question from Africa. So therefore this is also a very important question. So try to answer this question in the comment section and I'll be providing you the correct answer in tomorrow's lecture. And today we'll start our discussion with one important, a very important editorial, that is the delicate balancing of healthcare costs. Now in India, the problem is that the out-of-pocket expenditure on healthcare is very high. Out-of-pocket expenditure on healthcare is significantly higher, right? And apart from that, the other major factor in India's healthcare is around 70% of the healthcare is managed or concentrated in the private sector. So since there is a poor performance on the part of the government sector in providing affordable health care at a quality quality and affordable health care by the government hospitals, there is a significant concentration of the private hospitals or private healthcare facilities across the country, and that has been significantly increasing the out of pocket healthcare expenditures in India. And see, when people are poor and when they cannot afford the high out-of-pocket expenditures, then they are deprived of essential healthcare services, which are very important to further improve their productivity over a period of time, and it will also help those people come out of the chronic cycle of poverty. However, so if these healthcare costs remains high, then it would be very difficult for poor to access healthcare services. And so how we can balance the healthcare costs, the author has been discussed in this editorial. We'll try to understand this in a very in-depth manner. So what is the context of this particular editorial? The context is that, if you look at the overall landscape of Indian healthcare system, it is mostly dominated by the significant cost considerations. So there is a higher healthcare cost. So if you look at the overall healthcare landscape, okay, and due to increasing healthcare costs, it has been influencing or impacting every aspect of the service delivery and even the patient care also. However, there has been a significant rise in health disparities and even and uneven access to the medical services also. So those are the problems. There is a significant health disparities. Now, health disparities in the sense that, for example, the poor may not be able to access the healthcare services because of their financial conditions, because of their poor living standards. So therefore, there is a difference between how different categories of people are accessing the healthcare services. And apart from that, the other problem in the Indian healthcare sector is uneven access to the medical services. This is also true, and this is also in line with the health disparities, because these health disparities are caused by uneven access to the medical services. So now in this context, the author has been telling us that there is a need for equitable, sustainable healthcare policies so across India, and it is also an urgent need than before. Okay, so we must focus ourselves on ensuring equitable and sustainable health care for all the people, irrespective of their social status and the economic status. And first and foremost thing, when we are talking about the healthcare disparities and uneven healthcare in Indian health landscape, we need to talk about the cost considerations and even the rising disparities also. So rising disparities in access to healthcare, and that is a significant issue that that should be addressed here. Okay, because rising healthcare cost, what happen? It affects the service delivery of healthcare, and at the same time it also impacts the patient care because of the rising healthcare costs. And in fact, this is also coupled with increasing disparities in accessing healthcare and even the uneven access to these medical services. So cost considerations would further increases the disparities across the country. So however, we need to talk about setting rates for various medical services. So setting rates for the medical services essentially comes under the regulation of the prices for different medical services. So therefore, we can prevent the arbitrary charge of higher rates or higher prices for healthcare services by the private sectors. And in fact, the price setting or setting of rates for various medical services provided by the private medical service providers is very important for shaping healthcare access and even the delivery also, healthcare access and healthcare delivery also. And in fact, we can also learn from the international experience, which can significantly help us develop effective cost management strategies, and that would help us in reducing the healthcare costs across the country. However, we must balance affordability with the innovation in the Indian healthcare. That is also very, very important. Now, how can we balance the affordability with the innovation? Now, please understand here. So when we make healthcare more and more affordable, even in the private sector also, affordable healthcare in the sense that we are imposing certain regulations on the prices or rates charged by the private healthcare institutions. Now, when the state has been intervening and regulating the private healthcare hospitals or healthcare providers and setting certain rates for the services that they are providing, now what happens, it in fact discourages innovation on the part of these private healthcare service providers. So now the concern is that how can we balance affordability with innovation? That is a key concern. So price caps, no doubt. So when we put a price caps on the services provided by the private healthcare service providers, so they can improve the affordability. Everyone can access healthcare at affordable prices, but they may reduce the healthcare quality and innovation. So how it reduces the innovation and healthcare quality? Because it very often discourages the private healthcare service providers to innovate. And now we need to talk about the value-based pricing of the healthcare services. Now, what exactly is this value-based healthcare, value-based pricing? So it actually depends on the outcomes. Okay, so what should be the outcome after providing the treatment? So that is known as value-based pricing. So where the payments are based on outcomes and it could be a solution. Okay, so based on the outcomes, the prices can be fixed or prices can be decided. And after that, the dynamic pricing models. So these dynamic pricing models, so they regularly changes. The prices of providing services regularly changes. Consider the medical complexity and patient financial status are recommended. Okay. Now, what is the role of technology in cost-effective healthcare, in providing cost-effective healthcare? So technology in fact plays a very important and very crucial role. For example, we need to understand the potential of telemedicine, right? So how telemedicine actually play a very important role, right? Because through telemedicine we can provide all necessary healthcare information or healthcare services to the people who are living in the remote rural areas. So therefore technology like telemedicine can improve access to care and even reduces the costs also. So however, the electronic health records and mobile health tools, so they can actually improve the coordination and even the chronic disease management also. Now in this context we need to bridge the digital divide. And digital divide essentially it means that, so when we are providing these digital services, so when we are providing services like telemedicine through access through digital devices to different sections of the people, now there is a digital divide that was existing. Digital divide in the sense that the people will not be able to have access to the digital device, or they do not have the digital literacy. So for example, the digital divide is very often seen among the people of urban and rural areas, and even men and women. So therefore in this context we must divide the digital divide. Okay, so we must bridge this digital divide, and that is very essential and very important for ensuring everyone gets benefited from these advancements in the field of science and technology, and how we rope in science and technology in providing cost-effective care also. However, apart from all these things, we should also look into the stakeholder engagement and even bringing in or formulating the data-driven policies. So in this context, we must engage all the stakeholders who are involved and who can help us significantly cut down the cost of providing healthcare. Okay, so they include private healthcare providers. They are key to crafting effective policies. And apart from that, we should also look into the data-driven insights. Now, the data-driven policy making or evidence-based policy making is very, very important and very crucial for providing healthcare, efficient healthcare at a cost-effective or in a cost-effective manner. And in fact, this data-driven insights will actually help us better rate setting frameworks also for the private healthcare institutes, and that will significantly help us cutting down the cost or making healthcare more and more affordable. However, here the author has given certain recommendations for certain healthcare. Now, what kind of recommendations that he has been given for the sustainable healthcare? So implementation of the pilot projects. So for example, if there is any novel or innovative method in providing healthcare services, rather than implementing it in a larger scale, so why don't we bring it as a pilot project to assess the impact and evaluate its shortcomings. Okay, so when we do it, we can also further modify it according to the needs of the people. And after that, government should also allocate a significant amount of subsidies to support research and development in the private hospitals also. And in fact, this acts as an incentive on the part of these private hospitals to innovate. And after that, there should be a public private partnerships also to integrate advanced technologies in these public hospitals. So therefore, we need to focus on PPP, and apart from that, research and development. In this research and development, the government must provide financial assistance, and at the same time, if there is any innovative method, we need to implement those innovative methods through a pilot project. So these are some of the recommendations for providing sustainable healthcare, and that is how we can balance the innovation and affordability also. However, the utmost priority should be affordability of healthcare. I mean, affordability of the healthcare actually means that the cost effectiveness of healthcare and access to healthcare for all. So universal access to healthcare and affordability of the healthcare services. Now in this context, affordable healthcare for all is a priority for India, and we need to foster innovation while ensuring equitable access to quality healthcare. Okay, so this is how we can balance the innovation and with the healthcare requirements or healthcare needs. So the next very important article editorial is about the right to property. And right to property is a very often debated topic. Okay, so this is very often debated topic. So earlier we knew that right to property was part of the fundamental rights, but through 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, right to property was removed out of the fundamental rights because of several legal constraints that are being involved, and after that it was included as part of Article 300A, so removing out of the fundamental rights. Now we'll briefly understand the context of this particular editorial, and then we'll try to proceed and discuss this. Okay, so the debate around the property rights of individual. So the author has been saying that in India, the right to property and debates surrounding the right to property have a long history, so especially with respect to the post-colonial era. So the right to property initially considered as part of the fundamental rights, but later it was made a constitutional right because it was removed from the fundamental rights, and later it was included in the constitution under Article 300A of the constitution, because there were frequent petitions were filed in the Supreme Court whenever the state acquires the property from any individual for any public purpose. So because of that reason, the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act removed right to property as a fundamental right, and later it was made a constitutional right. So why? Because it was a subject of contention between the courts and the legislatures. So because of that reason and frequent petitions which are being filed in the Supreme Court, so it was removed out of the fundamental rights and made a constitutional right. Now what are the controversies which are surrounding these property rights? So that is what we have to understand. Now in fact, it is said that the property rights in India have experienced a lot of changes since independence. Right. So when we talk about the changes in the property rights, the interpretation and application of compensation for property acquisition. For example, imagine that a state is planning to acquire property from an individual called A. Then if state wanted to acquire such a property from individual A, then the state must pay certain compensation to an individual A, and after that the state can acquire the property for the public purpose. Okay, so therefore the interpretation and application of this compensation for property acquisition. And this has led to the complex legal history, and that has involved judiciary and even the legislature also over a period of last several decades. However, the major debate over the right to property was revolving around the compensation, providing right compensation. Because during initial years, the Supreme Court has interpreted right to property, the compensation whenever the state acquiring the property from an individual, the Supreme Court interpreted compensation as compensation under Article 31 Clause 2 of the Constitution as a just equivalent of what the owner has been deprived of. Okay, so it should be equivalent of what the owner was deprived of. So that was the interpretation of the Supreme Court as per Article 31 Clause 2. And because of that reason, it has led to several amendments by the legislature to limit the judicial scrutiny over the compensation of whenever, for example, again we'll come to that example. State planning to acquire the property from person A. So when state planning to acquire property from person A, state would pay certain compensation to the individual A and then acquire the property, right? So if individual A believes that state is not paying adequate compensation to him, then he can approach the court, because court already has said that, already interpreted this compensation as a just equivalent of what the owner has been deprived of. So because of this particular intervention of the Supreme Court, so it has led to several amendments by the legislature to limit the judicial intervention or judicial scrutiny over the compensation that the state provides. However, the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1971, okay, so 25th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1971 actually replaced the word compensation with the amount which is being provided by the state to the individual from whom the property was taken. So the overall intention of replacing the word compensation with the amount is to prevent the courts interference or courts questioning the adequate compensation which is being provided by the state to the individual who is deprived of the property. Okay, so in fact it is considered as a strategic move on the part of the legislature to facilitate property acquisition by the state. So this move has facilitated the property acquisition, so without any problems for the state. Okay, so however, there are certain global gender gap concerns and also policy implications, and we should also try to link them with the property acquisition. So across the world, we have been observing that the gender gap has been widening. Now, widening gender gap in the sense that the differences and the distinctions between male and female have been widening across the world. However, when we talk about the property rights, so these property rights also have the similarities with respect to the gender equality. Now, this has been highlighting how legal and policy changes can actually impact the marginalized groups differently. So how the legal and policy changes from the state would impact different sections of the people differently. And after that, it will also have impact on the property ownership as well. For example, as I've already told you that earlier, the right to property was part of the fundamental rights, but it was removed from the fundamental rights and then it was placed in the Article 300A and it became the constitutional right. Okay, so therefore it reflects the broader policy implications. And it also has similarities with the gender-based policies, can influence the workforce participation and social equity. Now, the author tried to draw the parallels between widening gender gap and the property rights. Okay, so after that, concerns over social stigma also, there are certain concerns. So ensuring fair compensation for property acquisition, so without perpetuating the social stigma, is very crucial and very important here. Okay, so this is also similar to addressing the menstrual health without reinforcing the gender stereotypes on the part of the states. So that is how the author has drawn the parallels. So however, there are certain challenges in the implementation and ensuring inclusivity of the right to property. Now, what are those implementation hurdles when we talk about the implementation of right to property? Right, so first and foremost, when we implement fair compensation for the property acquisition, so this has actually involved a lot of challenges. So these challenges including ensuring transparency, accountability, and even adherence to the principles of natural justice. So these are some of the challenges, and we must fulfill, or we must overcome all these challenges whenever we are providing the fair compensation after depriving the property of individual. And after that, there are certain enforcement challenges also. Now, enforcement challenges include misuse or inappropriation of enforcement of property. And at the same time, whenever there is a misuse or inappropriate enforcement of property acquisition laws, so it will lead to the larger public distrust, and it will also create several legal hurdles whenever we misuse the property acquisition laws in India. So therefore, there is a need for a robust legal frameworks and also the enforcement mechanisms, and they are the need of the hour. Now, in this context, we must promote inclusivity, and individual support should also be extended with respect to the property rights. So, recognizing the diverse property ownership experiences and then tailoring support to individual needs is essential, and it is also fosters an equitable legal environment similar to inclusivity and gender related policies. Okay, so this should be the way forward with respect to the right to property, and how the state can acquire the property from an individual in a fair and just manner, and how state can provide compensation without any social distinctions or social discrimination. And next very important article is with respect to the forest fires in Himachal Pradesh. Okay, so context of this particular article is that a prolonged dry spell and usually high temperatures across Himachal Pradesh in past month have actually triggered several wildfires. Now, what are these wildfires? So wildfires are also known as forest fires. So whenever due to number of human-made factors and natural factors, the forest area starts burning, and that would have a huge implications on the wildlife in those forest areas. And these wildfires in Himachal Pradesh have actually destroyed hundreds and thousands of hectares of forest cover, and even the damaged biodiversity and forest ecosystem as well, because the forest fires very often have the impact on the wild flora and fauna which is living in those forests. So therefore, it has damaged the biodiversity and also the forest ecosystem as well. So the government data has been showing that as many as 1,318 forest fires breakout or outbreaks have been reported across the state this year. So now we'll briefly understand what exactly is this forest fire. Okay, so forest fire is an unplanned and uncontrolled and unpredictable fire in an area with a combustible vegetation. Okay, so this is the definition of forest fire, and whenever you are being asked a question, mains question on forest fires, so you can simply write this particular definition, right? This is an unplanned, unpredictable, uncontrolled fire in an area with a combustible vegetation. So depending on the type of vegetation present, for example, when we talk about the deciduous forests, so they have the higher probability or the higher vulnerability to these forest fires compared to the rainforests over the Western Ghats and the southern parts of India. Okay, so these wildfires or forest fires actually depend on type of vegetation which is present. And in fact, the wildfire may be specifically identified as a bushfire, desert fire, grass fire, hill fire, wheat fire. So there are different categories of forest fires based on the type of vegetation that was prevalent over there. And in fact, on this image you can clearly see the vulnerability to forest fires across the different states of India. Okay, so you can see that Odisha is the state with highest incidences of forest fires. So in a similar way, number of states have the huge vulnerability to these forest fires. So the wind spreads fire rapidly, and it also causes the air pollution also, because now when these forests are being burnt, they releases a lot of pollutants into the environment, and that would lead to the air pollution. Generally the fires actually continue for a longer and are highly inflammable, caused by the climate changes. So these forest fires are very often associated with the climate changes, but not just climate change is responsible for the forest fires. There are several other factors which are also responsible. But due to climate change, what has been happening? So climate change has been resulting in unpredictable weather conditions, especially the rising temperatures and heat wave like conditions. So those conditions have been further adding fuel to the fire. So that is one of the major cause of the forest fires across the country. So however, we need to talk about certain government initiatives in India for forest fires management. So what are those initiatives? First and foremost, we talk about the forest fire alert system. So this forest fire alert system was developed by the Forest Survey of India. Okay, so this system was developed to monitor the wildfires in a real time. So that was the objective of forest fire alert system. And after that, there is also a moderate resolution imaging spectro radiometer sensors, and it is known as MODIS. Okay, so this MODIS was also these sensors, we can use these sensors for real-time information on forest fire is collected and sent to the Forest Survey of India. So this Forest Survey of India then in turn forwards all the data by email to the state, district, division, range, beat levels, and people in the locality where these forest fires are taking place can also get this information through the SMS alerts. And after that, another initiative is National Master Plan for Forest Fire Control also. Okay, so in fact the government prepared this National Master Plan for Forest Fire Control. So under this particular initiative, government aims to introduce coordinated and integrated fire management programs. So next we'll understand the effects of forest fire. So what are the major effects of forest fire whenever these forest fires are taking place? So forest fires can actually impact the economy of any region or any country, because now see a lot of families actually depend on these forests for food, fodder and fuel. So these forest fires have been taking place very frequently, and they are destroying the forests and the wildlife which is in these forests. So that also indirectly destroying the livelihoods of the people who are dependent on these forests. So it also burns down the small shrubs and grasses, leading to the landslides and the soil erosion over these forest areas and mountainous regions. And we all knew the consequences of these landslides, where a number of people were died because of these landslides, and also property losses were also reported. And in fact, the other major problem with the forest fires is air pollution, right? So because when the forest fires took place, so the forests actually release a lot of smoke and poisonous gas emissions, and these smoke and poisonous gas emissions would result in significant health issues for the humans in the longer term. And after that, they also destroy the habitat of animals, and they tend to reduce the biodiversity of a region, because a number of animals either would be displaced, they lost their habitat, and they would be killed under these forest fires. So therefore it would also cause the biodiversity loss, and they venture into cities, and even man-animal conflict would also takes place because of these forest fires. And after that, these forest fires also destroy vegetation, soil quality, and even the flora and fauna of these forest areas. Now, what are the major causes of these forests? forest fires. So forest fires can be caused by both natural factors as well as the anthropogenic factors. So when we talk about the natural factors of the forest fires, so lightning is one of the major factors. So you can see here, so lightning on the dry forest could result in forest quickly catching the fire. Okay, so therefore the spark which is being produced by the lightning strike would also a major cause of the forest fires in several places of India. And after that, volcanic eruption is another cause. This is also resulting in the forest fires. Okay, so because the hot magma in the earth's crust is usually expelled out as a lava, and during this volcanic eruption, this lava comes out of the volcanic mountains. The magma comes out of the volcanic mountains as lava, and this hot lava then flows into the nearby fields, lands to start large-scale wildfires. So however, the major factors which are contributing to the wildfires are anthropogenic factors, particularly smoking. Okay, so smoking can cause forest fires globally. So it is also one of the leading and major cause of forest fires across, because the irresponsible tourism. So due to the irresponsible tourism, and at the same time throwing away the cigarette butts without completely extinguishing them, so all these factors are major contributors of the forest fires. And after that, there are also campfires. Whenever someone camping out and outdoor activities, so people normally leave the lit fires and combusting material unattended, and this further ignites the wildfires also. And burning debris, for example waste and trash, on several occasions. Okay, so this will also leads to the forest fires across different parts of the world, and particularly in India. For example, the recent Simlipal forest fire incident. So after that, the Zoom cultivation or shifting cultivation, where the people would simply burn the forest to prepare the soil for the cultivation of few crops. This Zoom cultivation or shifting cultivation to some extent is also responsible for the forest fires. So therefore, what should be the way forward to reduce these forest fires? So the way forward should be capacity building. Okay, so across India, we need to build capacity of the forest departments officials across different levels, the state level, national level, regional level. So this could reduces the vulnerability and also significantly improves the capacity of the forest officials to deal with the forest fires in the future. And after that, there is a need for the forest control manuals also. So now when we have these forest fire control manuals, and the field staff is actually equipped with these forest fire control manuals, so they help in early detection of forest fires, reporting, and even the controlling of the forest fires also. So after that, we should have as a nation a comprehensive forest fire policy. So this comprehensive forest fire policy would address all the challenges, drawbacks, shortcomings in the forest fire management. And it should also incorporate the dimension of climate change also, because with the climate change, there is an increasing intensity and the frequency of forest fires also. So indigenous knowledge should also be used to deal with these forest fires. Okay, so the knowledge and techniques of the indigenous tribal people can also be used as a solution for the comprehensive wildfire management, or as a part of this comprehensive wildfire management. So after that, we need to create necessary infrastructure or essential infrastructure also. For example, improving the staffing and capacity of the firefighters in the forest areas. Okay, so we can do the construction of watchtowers in different parts of the forest area, especially the forest areas, so which are more vulnerable to these forest fires. And after that, we can also create crew stations, hiring seasonal fire watchers to spot these fires, etc. So these measures can be done to prevent the forest fires across the country. So the next very important article is Indian Council of Medical Research seeks to provide an oral formulation of hydroxyurea to treat the sickle cell disease. Okay, so sickle cell is a disease. Now, a oral formulation is administered through the oral route, through the mouth. Okay, so now ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, seeks to provide this oral formulation of hydroxyurea to treat the sickle cell disease. Okay, so the Indian Council of Medical Research has invited the expression of interest from all eligible organizations for the joint development and the commercialization. Okay, so ICMR with the intending joint partner will develop and also commercialize a low dose or pediatric oral formulation of hydroxyurea to treat the sickle cell disease in India. Okay, so that will treat the sickle cell disease in India, right? So we all knew that ICMR is the apex biomedical research body in the country. Okay, so in fact, when we talk about the sickle cell disease, see, sickle cell is an anemia type. So okay, so this is a different anemia variety. And if you look at this particular disease, India has the highest prevalence of sickle cell disease in South Asia. Around 20 million people with the disease, they live in the country. So however, most pharmaceutical companies in India market 500 mg capsules and 200 mg tablets of hydroxyurea. So however, the biggest challenge in treatment of this sickle cell disease is that it is not available in the suspension form for effective use in the case of pediatric patients. Okay, so so when we talk about this particular sickle cell disease, most pharmaceutical companies in India, so what they are doing, okay, so they are selling these drugs, 500 mg and 200 mg tablets of hydroxyurea. However, the biggest challenge for the treatment is that it is not available in the suspension form for effective use in case of pediatric patients. Now, what exactly is the sickle cell disease? It is a most common monogenic disorders of hemoglobin, and hydroxyurea is a myelosuppressive agent, and it is also an effective drug for treating patients of sickle cell disease and even the thalassemia disease also. However, according to National Health Mission's guidelines, healthcare providers initiate the hydroxyurea therapy for this sickle cell disease to only the symptomatic sickle cell disease patients, especially among children, both because of lack of availability of pediatric doses as well as the fear of toxicity once we administered this hydroxyurea therapy. Okay, so however, now ICMR exploring the possibility of jointly developing and commercializing this particular hydroxyurea oral administration. So with the availability of the formulation with the ICMR, the titration of the drug can be better and its dose related side effects can be reduced significantly also. So the council said that it could enter into any form of exclusive or non-exclusive agreement with any interested party or any eligible manufacturing company for joint development and also commercialization of this pediatric oral formulation of hydroxyurea for the sickle cell disease. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.